Some people put everything into their work. Their name on the door, and their heart into their community. Small Business Saturday is a day to show our support. A day to shop at stores owned by our friends and neighbors. And do our part for the businesses that do so much for us.
Well, this was a commercial from a couple of years ago, but even so, the sentiment's there. It's Small Business Saturday, this upcoming Saturday. Latest it could be, November 30th, I believe.
I think so.
And that voice right there is Zach Miller. Now, first of all, Zach, the company I work for, the station I work for, you have a radio show called Truckstop Radio. And I brought you on because actually your show on Saturdays is having a huge series on this. You've had a couple interviews with regard to Small Business Saturday, have you not?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. This is really exciting. Exciting to be on this side of the table. But yeah, that's one of the things we talk about on the show, just in general. We call it, the voice of small business in New York. And so we try to have as many small business advocates on as we possibly can. So last week, to talk about Small Business Saturday, we had a friend of ours, Leslie Brown, who is the president of the Forest Hills Chamber of Commerce, and everything that they're doing, in that community for Small Business Saturday. But it's, replicated throughout the city.
It's definitely in my backyard. My residence is in Jamaica Hills, so Forest Hills is right there.
Yep.
But now you do Truck Stop Radio, but you do more than just trucker talk, and that's the beauty of your show.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, that's the thing. When we started, before we even started the show, when we started the website, one of the things we wanted it to be was sort of like the virtual truck stop. So what do people talk about at truck stops? Well, they talk about business, they talk about politics, and they talk about trucking. So that's sort of what we put on the website, and it's the same thing with the show. That's what we want to talk about, all those facets.
Now, your Small Business Saturday in and of itself, I do feel like that's the only day of the year that small businesses are honored. I mean, throughout the rest of the year, the entrepreneurial spirit has not been as highlighted as it should. Would you agree with that?
I would 100% agree with that, 100%, especially in this city, in this climate. There's a very anti-commerce climate in this city. And frankly, look, I patronize Forest Hill shops. I love small businesses, but I also use bigger companies. I do both. Let's not lie. But with the bigger companies, those are the ones that get all the attention. Those are the ones that get all the tax breaks. Those are the ones that really suck the air out of the room in good and bad ways.
Sure.
And that leaves a real shortfall for these small businesses.
Well, and not only that, it just seems like if there are heavy taxes on big businesses, the small businesses are going to get just as much affected, are they not?
Oh, I would even say more so. I'll give you an example in what we're talking about on our show this week. There's this bill that they're talking about passing in New Jersey, this independent contractors bill. And they're sort of jumping on the backs of the California bill. And the reason for this, essentially, is because a lot of these Silicon Valley transportation companies have taken advantage of workers by giving them an independent contractor designation where really they should have been employees and they should have been paying benefits and all that. And I have a problem with that. You have to treat people fairly. However, a regulation like this is not going to really hurt those companies. It's going to hurt the small businesses.
Right.
It's going to hurt the owner-operators, and it's also going to hurt the small businesses that need to hire, sort of part-time gig-type workers.
Well, and let's think of it this way. It also, what we saw with Amazon did hurt that small business community because Amazon was going to go right there.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a big corporation. But and I bring them up because Cuomo was getting slammed with emails. I'm sure you saw the Post article
I did.
about that. And it's just like, I don't care if they're a big business. That's a small business community that they could have really had a positive impact on.
Oh, 100%. And to me, that was even – look, anytime a government entity throws numbers out there, if it's money that they're going to spend, I always say double it. If it's revenue that they say they're going to bring in, I always say cut it in half. Amazon was, I think, the closest to accurate that there would have been because, exactly like you say, because of the economic impact on the small businesses, on entrepreneurs who are saying, hey, I could open up this restaurant, this studio. I could sell my services to people who work for Amazon or who work for people who work for Amazon. And I don't love the word trickle down because I think it sort of isn't – it's not that windfall that we expect, but I think in this case – that's what would have happened. We would have seen
absolutely.
a nice stream flowing.
Now, your dad got you involved with all this. He was in the trucking business, is that right?
Yeah, so he worked for a sanitation company.
Arthur Miller is his name?
Arthur Miller, yeah. So he worked in-house for a sanitation company. He was a safety compliance guy. They couldn't, because it was a whole big thing, he couldn't be the official, attorney. So he worked in safety and compliance. He worked for them for like about 5 or 6 years. The industry changed a little bit, and he went out on his own and started handling fleets, parking tickets, traffic tickets.
I was going to say, and watching the way he might have been politically outside the attorney thing, watching all that, and then him telling you about it must have inspired you to get involved and really speak up.
Oh, completely, because it's sort of like, you grow up with something, so you understand it, warts and all, and then you hear people talking about it, and you're like, you have no idea what you're talking about whatsoever. And not only that, but wait, people are taking you seriously, and you don't even know what you're saying?
And would you say that's applicable to politicians in today's world, too?
I think it is you should have that cryon under every single politician, when they're talking on CNN, so-and-so is fed nonsense from somebody who doesn't know and is making assumptions about an industry they can't possibly understand.
Well, I've seen, and I covered this a while ago, that they were going to try and regulate the truck industry because the hours that these truckers were working, 19 hours at one point?
They do. No, and it is a serious concern, the hours of service, but one of the things that that I think you're referring to on the federal level is they're trying to make some changes to it to allow the truckers a little bit more flexibility, because they're so tightly regulated in terms of when they can take breaks and when they can't, and it's problematic because in some cases they have to wait around to receive their shipment. Sometimes they're stuck in traffic, and
Sure.
what are they going to do? They're going to pull over off the side of the FDR? Like, come on.
Well, one of the big ones that I think I texted you as I saw it, was, of course, Smoking the Bandit, and those guys were like the big. Those are the sample size of the truckers that we got to see on the big screen. Has that changed at all? Has that type of trucker changed at all over the years?
Absolutely. A lot, because of sort of the population growth around urban areas and with the rise of e-commerce. So many what you call truck trips are last mile, within a 100-mile radius. So a lot of these truckers aren't really over the road. They have very set routes. They do the route every day, and they go home at night, which is interesting because it's a little easier to find people who want to take those types of shifts than the, Smoking the Bandit, over-the-road trucker. That's it. So, and there are people who are still drawn to that lifestyle, but it's fewer.
Were you about to say that's insulting to most truckers?
No, it's not insulting at all. Look, that's how it was back in the day. That's how it was. But just the economics have completely changed.
Well, and I was going to talk about that, and I was thinking about this as I was preparing for this podcast interview with Zach Miller, co-host of Truckstop Radio. Now, tell us the times really quickly.
So we're at 1 p.m. Saturdays on 970 and 570, but during football season, it kind of shifts around a little bit. So we'll usually be at 1 on one of the stations, and then the other station will jump around a little bit.
Now, I'm not a sales guy, but I think Zach can attest to you. Army could actually give you a great lead-in, if you remember correctly.
Oh my gosh. This was so exciting. So it was the Army-Michigan game, and we were coming on after that game, which kept getting pushed back. I think the show was supposed to start at like 4, and that game went into like 4 overtimes or whatever it was. But I was, our contact here at the station, Greg, was a little nervous. He's like, "Are you guys going to get to it?" I'm like, "No, please, more football, more better football. Lead into it." I love it.
2 overtimes, of course, Michigan ended up winning, but one of the big scares for Michigan this year. That's a different story. Let's talk about the small business aspect for the trucker, because a lot of them are small business owners, are they not?
Oh, yeah. So that's one of the things that I mentioned earlier with the New Jersey. So serving the New Jersey ports, the ports of New York and New Jersey, about 77% are owner-operators, which are small business owners. It's basically a person who owns one, maybe they own 2 trucks, and that's it. And that's sort of what we love about it. It's the entrepreneurial spirit. It's the American dream. We're gonna work really hard. It's not an easy life. And frankly, you're not going to make a whole lot of money, but you could support yourself and you could support your family. You're a business owner, and you have this great understanding of the economy and of how commerce needs to flow. And that's why I think using owner-operators is such an asset to the trucking industry.
And I know you want to launch Truckstop into a bigger-than-life radio, a media company.
Oh, absolutely.
Not just radio, not just the website. What's the website, too?
The website, NewYorkTruckstop.com. Well, absolutely, because, again, to the point you were making earlier, there's so much sort of misinformation out there about trucking. No one's speaking for small businesses. To me, it seems like a perfect opportunity. It's just people need to know. People need to be informed. And small businesses, truckers, people who work what used to be called blue-collar jobs, but they're trades, they're really good careers. They need advocates too. Why should everybody else have an advocate, you know?
Now, you were recently at a conference, and I'm just thinking to myself, how has the trucking industry been impacted by social media? Because I feel like small businesses have been entirely impacted, but they may still not know how to work it because they're so used to the word of mouth kind of community feel.
That's such a fantastic question. There are so many ways. I mean, one is sort of the negative way, is sort of negative publicity could travel a lot faster now. So, look, we know not everybody operates the way they're supposed to. Mistakes happen. But, you know, when it does happen, it paints the entire industry in a bad light. Also, but at the same time, you don't necessarily need to have that broker anymore. When you need freight, you have more, or, you know, you need to pick up or drop off a load, you have a little bit more options to get that notification out there. So, you know, it's a double-edged sword with most things social media.
And so would you say the trucking industry has been able to promote better with this new age, or are they still kind of
I
in
think
a
we're
certain way?
behind. I got to be honest. I think we're behind. I think we are making improvements. And you know, certainly that's something that we at New York Truckstop try to bridge that gap.
They tweet a lot, and I love that about them. You know,
we do.
It's good.
We do. It does take away from other work, but you know, you have to fight the battles on the fields that they're played in, and that is social media, and that's why, you know, we all work hard. We all have our lives, but you have to be out there and you have to be telling your story, because if you're not telling your story, somebody else is going to tell it for you, and you're not going to like what they have to say.
Now, you do radio, but do you find podcasts a good way to get the word out as well?
Absolutely, because it's there. You save it, you hold it. So it's like, so let's say, just for example, we did a podcast on hours of service. So if someone's searching for hours of service podcast, there it is, and it's always there. And as long as, you know, until the regulation changes, that information is accurate and it's easily digestible.
Now, your father has passed down the love of this trucking industry to you. Do you find that a lot in the industry? Or?
Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh, yes. It is such a family business type of industry. So many of my colleagues in the industry are, you know, second, third, fourth generation. And that still includes a lot of consolidation. But, yeah, it is really a family atmosphere. And, you know, successful companies give that to their employees, too. They make sure they feel like you're part of the family. And this is a family business. You don't need to have my last name.
Right.
You come in here, you work hard, we're going to take care of you like family.
Well, I think you remember I started this We the Shareholder series. I think I was telling you about that. Because all these companies, they get ridiculed on Wall Street or by all these, mainly Democrats, by the way, Democratic politicians, of how bad they are as CEOs and stuff. But they're actually benefiting their own employees, which no one talks about.
No, not at all. You know, look, hypocrisy, there's plenty of hypocrisy to go around. But certainly one of the interesting things, I always do find it interesting where some of these Democratic politicians, particularly on the further left, will get out there and they'll say, we need to stand up for, you know, the minorities and the working people and all that. And that's all well and good. You should stand up for people like that. But you can't then turn around and back policies that are going to hurt them. You know, it's just like, if you really want to stand up for people,
right?
You want to make sure that there's a climate where businesses can succeed, where employers are meant to feel like the better you treat your employees, the better we'll treat you.
Right.
Not you need to cut corners or else, you know, we're going to come at it's a whole messed up system that we have out here.
Now, at the same token, we both like to call out the Republicans when we have to.
Mm-hmm.
No one called out Jamie Dimon for saying he wouldn't return the 31, or however it was, million he got from the board. And I'm like, come on, guys, if you want to be for the people, that's not right either.
Absolutely. No, it's absolutely true. And you know, that's the problem when everybody's so, like, they live in their little cliques. So it's like you have, you know, the big money cliques where Jamie Dimon's floating around. And then you have on the Democrats, you have these more like progressive back groups who, you know, think they're for the working people, but they're not because they don't have real difficult jobs.
Mm-hmm.
look, I begrudge no one their living, but being a well-paid advocate is not the same as, working retail 6 days a week.
Well, so let's talk about that for a second. So trucking industry, how do you find the leaders there amongst the industry treat their employees compared to how, say, a retailer treats their employee, or say, I don't know, any big corporation treats their sort of ground level employee?
So that's the issue, right? I think, the big companies, the big trucking companies, I think there are a lot of problems with the way they treat their employees, from warehouse staffing to drivers and everything in between. The mid-sized firms do an amazing job. The mid-sized firms really do take those family values and apply it. Unfortunately, the industry is dominated by the big firms who
and do you want to name them? I'm not sure.
I don't see the need to name them, but you could Google it. Some of the big fours. There's a great joke in the insurance part of the industries, which is they're like, all right, you get your CDL, that's a commercial driver's license. You get your CDL, go drive for one of the big guys, go have your accident there, then come work for us.
Right.
Because they just need bodies. Honestly, it's kind of gross to think about it this way, but it is a numbers game. It is a dollars and cents. They have so much freight they need to move. They need warm bodies to do it. Whereas the smaller, the mid-sized firms, they prioritize safety above everything else.
Now, whenever I think of Truckstop Radio, I also think of the union component, because you guys are very involved with the union discussion as well.
Yeah, especially in this
in the city. Exactly. So how do unions either support or tamper or hamper, I should say, with small businesses?
So I think unions do a lot of good for their employees in terms of making sure the pay is where it needs to be, the benefits are where it needs to be, and making sure that the employee has an advocate. Now, like everything, sometimes that goes too far. And sometimes, let's face it, bad employees have to go, especially in a safety-sensitive industry. You're talking about people's lives, not just their livelihood, their actual lives. And the steps that companies need to do in a lot of cases to get bad employees out of there, it hurts small businesses. It hurts society at large, too. And we're seeing that in not just trucking. We're seeing that in a lot of these municipal unions, where like, you have the teachers in the rubber room. And again, some of those teachers have been falsely accused and have their their day in court. But there are a lot of bad teachers out there causing a lot of damage to students, and they got to be moved out of the profession.
I've always found that the good teachers have the longer route to tenure. Meanwhile, the bad ones seem to be issued it right away. Do you find that?
I would agree with that. It's so funny how that works. And
it's kind of weird, actually.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
And obviously, the other union in New York that gets a lot of play, SEIU, but also the TWU also gets a lot of play here. In New York.
They do, and I'll tell you, they're in a really tough spot right now because, and this is funny. I'll give you a little story. As you know, Arthur and I at New York Truckstop and Trucking Industry, we were really fighting against this congestion pricing.
Sure,
really fighting against it. So we went to a press conference earlier in the year against it, and the advocates came and shouted us down, and they had the union support because the union workers they're locked in a really difficult contract battle, and they were told, you help us out with scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And after the rally, we turned to them and we said, listen, you guys think you're doing something good here. You're on the chopping block next. And lo and behold, they got the congestion pricing done. And now what are they talking about? We need to lay off 2,700 workers.
Right.
We need to cut salaries, cut pensions. There's money for consultants, management consultants, of course.
Right.
But the workers, no, we don't need them. We could run it without them. And
union leaders often stiff-arm their guys,
That's
don't they?
exactly it. That's exactly it. Because then it's like any sort of political appointment. It's how do I consolidate power? Forget about the little people.
Yeah, what was I reading? I was reading something about that where, it's not good when they get all that power and they just want to disseminate it amongst their own people.
That's how it always goes. It's so sad, and it's just like it's you create these little fiefdoms, and at the end of the day, how are you helping anybody other than yourself?
Yeah, I got to research because I just saw that type of example on my phone. I got to find that and send it to you off air. I guess we'll do that. So no, and then of course, what do? They now slow down like the Brooklyn buses the other day. I guess you have a story on that?
No, it's just because you mentioned Small Business Saturday, so we have Thanksgiving this week. We have Christmas in a month. It's the holiday season in New York, and that's what the word on the street is. There's going to be a transit slowdown. Because they're unhappy with some of their changes. And again, I get why they're unhappy, but they were the ones who were used. And we told them they were being used, and they made fun of us. So
and they didn't listen to you.
They didn't listen. So you know what? I'm a sympathetic person, but there are limits to it.
Now, do you feel like union members are like the silent majority at times where they actually disagree, but they can't voice their disagreement?
100%. 100%. But I think maybe not in this go around, but I think in the next local go around, you'll start to see some of that. You'll start to see some people voting in ways that you would say, well, hey, wait a second. A union stronghold like that, I wouldn't have expected them to vote that way. That's a theory. We'll see how it goes.
By the way, I've always believed that the majority didn't pick de Blasio and Cuomo. I always thought the unions did. Is that an accurate assessment?
That's a great question. There's definitely union backing of them. They're definitely incredibly unpopular people. Look, we know the unions back them. We know there is union help. I think there are other factors, too. One is just flat-out disengagement. Most New Yorkers just don't vote. I think there's also a sort of a Trump bump in the negative way, in that where people in New York just are so kind of disgusted with Trump that they couldn't bring themselves to vote Republican, even though they hate de Blasio and Cuomo just as much.
Yeah. Well, because then if you vote Republican, people are going to start asking questions.
Exactly. So then it's like
in their own union.
Exactly. So let's just take the most recent example, Borelli, right? So it's like I'm sure there are people who would have liked to have supported Borelli, but then felt, oh, he's too close to Trump, I just can't do it. I got to tell you, you really should.
And we love Joe Borelli. I've had him on this podcast.
I love him too, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, you really, and I'm not an ideologue. I'm not.
Right.
I vote for Democrats and I vote for Republicans. I vote for the person who I think will do the best job. And that's what it is. And I tell you, if more people voted that way, I think we'd have a very better run city.
Would you laugh in de Blasio or Cuomo's face if they just showed up at Small Business Saturday thing? I would kind of laugh in their face. I'll be honest.
I mean, I literally just did it. I laughed at the question. So yeah, I would certainly laugh in their face. Well, it's unfortunate that his presidential campaign ended so quickly.
Yeah,
we know de Blasio wants to be in Iowa this weekend. He doesn't really want to be supporting small businesses.
Now we got a former other mayor in there. It's like a carousel right now.
Oh my gosh, that's another whole crazy story.
Actually, Bloomberg for most of his term was a decent person. He actually was level-headed until his third term, and he went all nuts.
That is 100%. That third term really did number on this city.
Well, and the way he did it.
Yeah. It was disgusting.
If it was fair and square, I guess so. But he literally rewrote the...
He rewrote the rules, and the city council just kind of rubber stamped it.
Yeah. Well, what else are they... What are they not rubber stamping these days?
That's a great point, too.
I mean, they're now banning e-flavored cigarettes. Look...
I saw that.
But I'm just thinking, did they have their time wasted on other things that are so unimportant? The homeless guy down the street, no one cares about that, but no one in these fancy restaurants should have foie gras? I don't get it.
And my response to those isn't even small business necessarily. It's just like, wait a second, 1 in 10 New York City children is homeless. How many New Yorkers go to bed hungry? A lot of that does happen to be because small businesses struggle, and they're the ones who really hire people and pay taxes and all that stuff. So it's like, I'm not... I don't really want to eat foie gras or smoke, e-flavored flavored e-cigarettes, but it's like, if somebody really wants to do that, let him do it. That's not what you should be focusing on.
Well, I was just thinking down the street, Pret a Manger, there's one a few blocks away.
Yeah.
And they're a big company, but still in the community. They actually bag the rest of the food and they send it to City Harvest, and I'm like, that's a great thing.
That's amazing. And I'll tell you what's so fascinating, talking about corporate America. I heard from some of these small business advocates, like corporate America is trying to change their tune a little bit, and they are making investments in the communities through food, through sponsoring little leagues, through stuff like that, which is great to hear. Well,
it's interesting, and that is big. And also mergers, people might criticize it, but I think it's great Charles Schwab is back in the market trying to get, TD Ameritrade. That's like a small business being bought out by Schwab and hopefully bettering it.
And hopefully extending opportunities for people to, open investment accounts and...
Well, and we should have more of that, should we not, in the city?
Should. I mean, we absolutely should be.
Because I think what happened is the 2008 recession, which, by the way, colleagues our age are still feeling because
yeah.
10 years later, it's not just gone. Everybody's feeling the effects of it. But it hampered investing. It hampered the will to start something new. And there has to be saying, no, you can invest again. We can do this again.
Exactly. I totally agree with
and
that.
while I think the guys who hate the mergers or whatever are going to look at this and say, this is bad, I think it's good for America because we have to have a fact a merger is happening means somehow business is good.
Absolutely. Listen, the mergers are not really the issue. To worry about bankruptcies and worry about why companies go bankrupt, worry about like you said before, corrupt CEOs loading up books with debt. Don't worry about two companies merging to create a bigger, better product.
That's a good thing.
It's a good thing. Look, as long as the consumer gets a benefit, that's what's important.
And next door to us, WeWork was about to be bought out by J.P. Morgan Chase. But I think when J.P. Morgan Chase saw what the heck was going on with that, they ran away or something like that.
Well, that's really, if you ask me, that's the bubble that's going to burst is the Silicon Valley, venture capital bubble. It's completely unsustainable. It's just like you throw these insane valuations for companies that have no idea how to turn a profit. And
right.
This is what's supposed to drive the economy.
And they're millennial CEOs now, and they just want to get greedy. And what we saw with Adam Newman, we'll see with others around the nation.
I think that's one of the most dangerous trends. And this is not new, let's be fair. It's been going on for
But
decades,
with technology, it's made it new.
It's made it new because this rock star CEO is a problem. That's not really the CEO's job.
Right.
The CEO's job is to, set a vision, a profitable vision for a corporation. Not to set a branding vision for themselves, It's like we don't need the Instagram influencer CEO.
Right.
We need a CEO who knows how to run a company, provide jobs, provide a solid product that people want to buy.
Well, do you feel that the Instagram influencer is getting more influence in the business sector than it should?
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about business media. Cover actual business. Don't cover these people's, vacations and
right.
their life. Oh yeah, well he's got a mansion in Westchester and a mansion in L.
Unless you're Gary Hart, I guess that.
Well, there's always room for sex scandals.
Let's be honest. But that was a vacation everybody seemed to cover, front page to back page. And I wasn't even alive, but I've heard about it. And they made a movie about it recently, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. No, it was good. It was sort of like shifting in an era, like sort of the end of the whole old school boys will be boys type of era, and the new school no, you need to conduct yourself more appropriately.
Well, let's focus in really quickly on the social media influencers because I believe that is a good way to be entrepreneurial and build something.
Oh, definitely.
But how can we steer them on the right path?
Well, I think that's sort of the question is, and let's look at it. Let's take a step back. Because you mentioned, people starting to come of age, 10 years since the recession and all that. What is appropriate for a person to be doing in their early to mid-20s? It's completely different in your early to mid-30s, completely different from your early to mid-40s. You need to grow up. Companies need to grow up. Media needs to hold people accountable when they're not growing up. And investors need to stop investing in children, and I mean that emotionally, not, stop investing in children and start investing in viable products.
Right. Well, you talk about products and people. I think one of the first millennials that ever went down was Shkreli because he was like the first big guy, this youngster charging everybody through the roof, and now he's nowhere to be found.
No, and that's totally it because it was how do we support this lifestyle, not how do we provide life-saving drugs to people who need these life-saving drugs.
Right.
Obviously, yeah, in a profitable manner, but I think that's a great point. I totally forgot about him.
And then you had the affluenza kids. I mean, all these different cases. But you say held them accountable. How would you want to see them held accountable?
So I think one thing is to sort of stop coddling them, to sort of stop saying, it's okay that you don't have a pathway to profitability. It's okay that your company is basically owned by a hedge fund that nobody knows who's investing in there. Like, it's okay that you're disrupting these established businesses because, isn't it cool how many Instagram followers you have? It's like, what are you talking about?
And you find that, see, I don't know, I guess I'm not in that field to find it enough, but.
I find it very off-putting, and I find it because I think, look, we know media is struggling. We know clickbait is what sort of drives the revenue. So I'm sure they get it from above. If you write an article about, Elon Musk smoking weed, we'll get, X number of clicks versus if you write an article about, like Bloomingdale's third quarter struggle. Even just saying it right now, one sounds really boring and one sounds really exciting.
Yep.
But, the news isn't really supposed to be exciting.
Right. Well, and we should hold Musk accountable because I'm kind of glad the SEC is looking into him as well because, look, you can't do that and then you can't tweet out about your IPO or whatever and then shut it down. That was all a mess.
Exactly. It's a total mess. But again,
bordering on legality, I think.
It's a chicken and an egg thing, right? It's like, did he just do it to do it, or did he think that this would be okay after years and years and years of keep pushing the boundaries and pushing the boundaries and pushing the boundaries?
But he did get a Pentagon deal, which I thought was interesting out of all that.
Well, these Pentagon deals. I think it's like if it's between Bezos and Gates and him, I guess it was like he was the lesser of the three evils for the Pentagon.
For Trump, yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, but you know what? Listen, I mean, to me, this goes all the way back to to Howard Hughes and the Aviator. Government contracts is a dirty business. Let's be honest. It's not. They're not easy to get. A lot of competition, and at the end of the day, it's what is you're making a decision. What's your superior going to be happy with?
So the other mindset about small business in general and Small Business Saturday is that we're bringing people into a conscious decision to shop small. Because we're not going to go to Louis' coffee shop if Starbucks is really good.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think it's time we start training ourselves to be more small business minded?
I think if you can do that, if you can really think about every purchase you make and try to keep it as local as possible, I think that would be great for the economy. And it is interesting because one of the things they're trying to do is like sustainability, like environmental sustainability.
Right,
so it's like when you make your purchases, you should have that in the back of your mind. And I'm like, great, but what's more sustainable than small businesses?
Exactly.
And supporting small businesses.
Exactly.
So it's like that should be in the mindset too. It's like, let me just go local. Let me keep it as local as I possibly can.
Now, how often do you shop local in a week, would you say?
Geez, I would say at least. And
I mean, like, what kind of local? Like coffee shops?
Like,
and all
yeah,
that?
exactly. So, like, local delis, local bars, restaurants, all the time. I'm trying to even think how many chain stores I hit. Really, not that many. I'll use Walgreens as a pharmacy. There really aren't a lot of local pharmacies,
right?
Maybe once a week I'll get like something of Chipotle or Subway or Pret, but otherwise, I really try to keep it local.
Speaking of delis, bodegas have like become a surge here in New York. Everybody loves the bodega now.
Everybody loves it. Well, that goes back to Instagram. It's like, well, look at how cool this is. But yeah, people love their bodegas in New York. Thankfully, I mean, if those guys went away, can you imagine?
It would be pretty bad. And also, honestly, if the carts went away, I don't know what we do because they also keep the city running.
They do. The carts aren't going anywhere.
No,
there's no way.
And I don't think bodegas would either. But then again, they're paying rent, which is what these guys aren't, if I'm not mistaken.
No, you're 100% right, and that's why they do have to be really tight with permitting and things like that. Because that's your point. I mean, if you're spending $25,000 a month in rent, you can't just let somebody pull up on the corner right in front of you sell the same stuff.
Well, and we were talking about this the other day off air. We were talking about how, all these businesses and storefronts are closing. What happens if the big names go away? Then we need the small business, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. If the big names go away,
like Saks Fifth Avenue, I'm talking about.
I mean, I can't imagine what happens to the city. And yeah, but that's the point. It's like you need to like fill that space with 3 or 4 different businesses.
Right.
Maybe you could get one of them that takes off, but then you keep having the turnover and the turnover and turnover. It's a downward spiral right there.
Now, and then is there a chance though that big stores like Macy's and Saks Fifth Avenue do close because I feel like taxes are soaring on them as well?
I think is there a chance? Yes. I don't think it's going to happen. I do think that there are enough opportunities in retail and e-commerce for well-run companies to survive and thrive. I mean, I'll give you 2 examples. Look at Target and Walmart.
Sure.
They're in amazing – and I know these are big but they are in amazing shape. So, like, I don't want to hear about, like, the Amazon effect. It's like, those guys are crushing it. They're doing great. And so can Macy's. You know, and so can Saks. It's possible.
And at the end of the day, they do have to have a local mindset, do they not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have to accommodate for the community you want to serve. And you do that, people will flock to it. And then that's the whole thing with social media. They'll be like, oh, my gosh, look at what I just got to make. I'm having the time of my life.
Right.
And people see it. It's nuts, but it works. And so I am concerned, though, about increased, rent and regulation and taxes. It does really weigh a lot of companies down.
And as I'm thinking about it, another reason why I'd laugh into Blasio's face would be like, hey, guy, you're the one that told a small business not to have a vacant storefront or you're going to get taxed. Like, This is how bad it's gotten in New York.
It's gotten so bad. And again, it's like, it's nickel and dime city over here. So what do you expect these businesses to do? And it's like,
meanwhile, they're hauling out these $95 billion budgets a year, Zach. A year.
It's unbelievable. I think the city has 300,000 people on the payroll. I mean...
Talk about government waste, and now we have the city blocking probes against Carranza and De Blasio and
Yeah,
Charlene.
I need to speak to Holden about that, but that looks like a huge problem. And I don't want to go too far into it, but I definitely know people who work in the city public school system, and they have been telling me these horror stories since De Blasio, but it's been escalated since Carranza.
Well, because he's been having all these, he wants certain ethnicities in there and stuff like that. It's gotten bad.
Right. It's basically like the sort of absurd... People used to have these really unwarranted, absurd fears about things like affirmative action and, quotas and stuff, and somehow the de Blasio and Carranza administration let it become a reality.
And we've literally progressed from the moderate Joel Klein, who was great, former guy. Randy Weingartner was okay, but then she became too union for my taste. She went on to be
she went to national,
UFT.
Yeah.
And then, but she was raising hell in the city.
Yeah,
and now we've got Carranza. So
yeah, exactly.
Oh, and Carmen Farina, a real gem.
Well, but really the problem is this top-down management. They got rid of the Board of Education. It's the Department of Education, so City Hall has complete control. I don't care how much you love or hate the mayor. The mayor shouldn't have control over every aspect of people's lives.
And he's wanted mayoral control for years, and Cuomo was very relenting to give it to him, and we know why, right?
Yeah, well, yes, but it's not like Cuomo's ever given up control of anything.
That too.
But you're 100% right. You're 100% right.
Because, Bloomberg, I think, had mayoral control.
Bloomberg was the one. It got to be mayoral control over Bloomberg. I mean, he's the one who took it away from being the Board of Ed to the Department of Ed. And that was mostly so he could sell some of his products to the schools.
And we should get into this on another topic because we're in our text messages, there's sometimes conspiracy theories. And one thing I got to talk about, because I take the LIR every day.
Oh, yes.
And the one that comes to mind is when you told me, I think they slow down the trains to collect fares. I'm like, are you kidding me? No way.
I have that theory. I can't prove it, but I just know there are times when I'm on the train and it slows down for no real reason, and then all of a sudden out pops the conductor, let me get your ticket. Which, look, they got to get the fares. I get that, but it's like if you can't collect the fare in the 15 minutes it takes from Forest Hills to Penn Station.
And by the way, do you know what was the number I sent you? Like $44 million, something in fare. They skipped a lot of fares over the last couple of years.
And I think that was just on the LIRR. I mean, I think when you include Metro North and subway evasion, you're talking about in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
And now they don't want cops to crack down on subway evasion. This is where we are in the city today.
No, because in the city, laws only matter if we want them to matter.
I'm trying to find the thing. Because I think it's important for New Yorkers to know, hey, you could get on one of these trains and get lucky, But also, it just was mismanagement, really.
Look, the MTA has one problem, and it is a management problem. Any other issue you would have with the MTA, it stems from management. I mean, I say it's a cartel. I basically say they're like the Medellin cartel, only a slightly more friendly. But yeah, this is not an organization I'm a particular fan of, and they are one of the most
$33 million in haphazard fare collection,
okay.
And that just shows that they're not cracking down enough, and that's also a worry because you don't want the tax dollars going to lazy management, but that's what's going on.
Oh, that's exactly what's going on, and that's where that congestion pricing money is going easily.
Yeah. Now, one other thing, and I was going to cover it over the last few days. Maybe you have a thought on it. Finally, National Grid and Cuomo come to a deal.
Finally, this was a huge problem. There are lots of businesses in Queens and Brooklyn who, they were still paying rent, they were still paying all their taxes and fees, but they couldn't have the gas hookup, so they couldn't be open for business. I mean, you're talking about wiping people's life savings out just because, the governor and this utility got into a fight. I am very glad they resolved it. I'm glad there's money there. Hopefully that money goes to pay restitution for those businesses.
What I see, $36 million fine or something to that.
Yeah, it was
too?
$36 million fine. I hope it goes back to make those entrepreneurs and small business owners whole.
And homeowners too.
And homeowners too.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That every single penny needs to go to the people who were hurt by this.
I'm pretty sure they saw the calendar and said, well, Thanksgiving's here, December's here, we got to get something done to at least get people warm again.
Definitely.
What was that about? Do you know exactly? Because I've been trying to
so
hunt
here's
down
what
the
it's
whole
about.
story.
So well, let me give a quick plug. There is an article on NewYorkTruckstop.com that explains this. We had Tom Gretsch on, who's the president of the Queens Chamber of Commerce, on a couple of months ago talking about it. So basically, I don't remember the name, but there was a pipeline that they wanted to extend, and the state vetoed it because it's a natural gas pipeline, and they don't want anything that's even remotely fossil fuels. But there was no alternative fuel right now that could have hit the demand that this pipeline could have. So that was the issue. And then
so it goes back to a pipeline.
It goes back to a pipeline not being extended by the state.
And I'm not surprised they didn't extend it because they just don't want anything to do with that.
No, they want nothing to do with it. And ordinarily, there's a lot of me that does agree with where National Grid is coming from, but they had to have known this was coming. I mean, like you say, New York State was never, in this climate, New York State was never going to approve a pipeline.
Well, and one other story, so to go back to the generational thing, which popped up in my mind, the other generational thing that's come under fire is the coal industry. But, I mean, I believe the coal industry is a generational thing, and if you do that, you take away lineages after lineage, and I don't think that's the right thing to do either.
Well, you know what really gets on my nerves? I think that it's the type of thing where the market can decide. I think there is just such less demand for coal. I think people don't really want that powering their vehicles and their homes and their businesses. So I think we're naturally going to move away from coal. I think that it should happen through market forces. I also really don't like it where a lot of these politicians get up there and they say, well, we could just retrain people, A, as if it's that easy, but also B, you're talking about the same people who cut trades, who cut, community college training.
Oh, yeah.
If you really want to make these investments in workers to get them different skills, different job skills, by all means do it. There's so many opportunities out there in the trades. But it can't just be all talk. You got to actually do it. You got to provide a plan for it.
And I think business training is another thing the city could do.
It's huge. There's so much that can be done. There's so much productive things that could be done to get to goals that a lot of these politicians set. But what's easier to do is just hit mandates.
Right.
And it's easier to just hit quotas and taxes. And that's how they run things. And that's why we're seeing people leaving in droves.
Right. And, well, that's another big problem here in New York. Maybe you have a better stat than I do on the amount of people leaving the state and the city as of right now.
I have, last I checked, this was from Bloomberg, it's about 300 people a day.
So he investigated something. That's good.
Well, it's his company. He's not doing the work.
But, no, I don't know if you guys know, but Bloomberg said, we're not going to investigate Mayor Bloomberg and his foundation and stuff. But the bothersome of that was they weren't going to investigate any other Democratic candidates, which I didn't understand either.
Yeah, but then I heard that one of Bloomberg's consultants is also involved in some Ukraine shenanigans, so I think that's where they started to
back
look
to
into
Ukraine
it.
again.
It's always back to Ukraine. Well, I mean, to be fair to the political consultants, they're going to go where the money is. That's just how it is.
And this National Grid and small business and everything, I feel like they just get overpowered by the sensational news of impeachment and all that. And it's up to us to change that narrative, is it not?
Oh, completely. It's completely up to us. And that's the whole thing. It's like, I don't really want to hear about what's going on in Washington. I don't care. Not when, my favorite restaurant is barely making enough to support the rent. It's like, that's what I care about.
Well, Zach Miller, Truckstop Radio, you hear it on AM 970 The Answer. You're hearing it tonight on this podcast, Keeping It Real with Alexander Garrett. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And,
this is great.
And I probably will not be with you Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving. And please do not charge the bull, so to speak, at Black Friday sales. Please do not rush into stores. Be safe and have fun. If you want to get on that line at 5 a.m., get to it. But that being said, be safe, have a beautiful holiday, and God bless you. And thankful for this podcast and for my family and friends every day.